Have you ever faced a question that wasn't easy to answer? A question that didn't just need logic, but also needed heart. Today, a little girl asked Clint Eastwood one such question, and the answer she received didn't just move her, but left the entire audience in tears. But the real story is yet to unfold. You won't want to miss this. Before we move forward, please subscribe my channel to hit 1,000 subscribers. There was a deep silence on the stage. A single spotlight focused on Clint Eastwood's face. His presence alone carried the weight of 1,000 stories. The audience sat below, their eyes locked on him, hanging onto every word. Clint stood at the microphone, his deep, gravelly voice filling the auditorium. He had just delivered a powerful speech about life, integrity, and courage. The crowd was captivated, absorbing each word as if it held a hidden truth. Then, a small, innocent voice broke the silence. "Excuse me, Mr. Eastwood, ... Heads turned toward the source. Standing near the edge of the stage was a little girl, no older than 8. She wore a simple white dress, her hands clutching an open book. Her eyes held a quiet wisdom beyond her years, and in them a question was waiting to be answered. Clint leaned forward slightly, his gaze gentle but curious. "Yes, sweetheart." The girl hesitated for a moment, glancing at her book, then looked up at him with unwavering determination. "Do you believe in God?" A hush fell over the room. The question was simple, yet profound. It wasn't just any question. It was the kind that made people stop and think, made them look deep inside themselves for an answer. Clint Eastwood studied the little girl's face. For a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. A memory, perhaps, or a long-buried thought. The weight of the question settled upon him, not as something to be brushed aside, but as something to be truly considered. The audience waited. The girl's eyes remained hopeful. And Clint was silent. Clint took a deep breath. His gaze remained fixed on the little girl, who was still waiting for his answer. The silence in the auditorium was thick, almost sacred, as if no one wanted to interrupt the moment. He finally brought the microphone closer and spoke in his signature deep, measured tone. "Sweetheart, that's a question everyone asks at some point in life. I was once your age, too. Someone asked me the same thing, but back then, I didn't have an answer." The girl's eyes widened slightly. With a faint smile, Clint asked, "But tell me something. What do you think? Do you believe in God?" The little girl looked down at her book, then back at him, hesitating before whispering, "My mom says God is everywhere, but I don't feel him." Clint nodded slowly. Then, in a calm, reassuring voice, he said, "Sometimes we can't see things, but that doesn't mean they're not there. Have you ever seen the wind? Number, but you feel it when it blows. Have you ever seen love? Number, but when your mother hugs you, you know it's real. God is like that too, always with us. Sometimes we just take too long to feel him." Something in the little girl's eyes changed. It was as if a tiny light had been lit within her, a new understanding forming in her young mind. Clint paused, then gently extended his hand toward her. "Your mom is right. You just need to learn how to feel him." For a moment, the little girl said nothing. Then, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Clint Eastwood looked out at the audience. Every face was turned toward him, waiting. The little girl stood still, her tear-streaked face reflecting a mix of curiosity and emotion. Lowering his voice, Clint spoke again. "Sweetheart, the question you asked, it's not easy to answer, but maybe I can tell you a story." My own story. Reaching into his leather jacket, he pulled out a small old locket. Inside was a tiny photograph, a little girl smiling up at the sky. A long time ago, I was a father to a little girl, my daughter, Emily. The room seemed to freeze. Clint's voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable weight behind his words. Emily was only 6 when the doctors told us she didn't have much time left. She had an illness no medicine could cure. I tried to stay strong, but inside, I was breaking. I didn't know what to do, who to ask for help. And the worst part, I didn't understand. If God was real, why was this happening to my little girl? A heavy silence settled in the room. Clint's eyes held memories, pain, and something else, understanding. One day, as she lay in her hospital bed, Emily looked at me and asked, "Daddy, why are you so sad?" I told her, "Because I can't save you, sweetheart." She held my hand and said, "Daddy, do you know something? I'm never alone. When I close my eyes, I feel someone with me. Maybe that's God." A single tear escaped down Clint's face. He wiped it away with the back of his hand and gave a small, bittersweet smile. That day, my little girl taught me something I never forgot. God doesn't always show himself when we want, but when we have nothing left, when we feel the most lost, that's when we finally realize he's been there all along. The audience sat motionless. The weight of his words had settled deep within them. Carefully, Clint closed the locket and slipped it back into his pocket. Then, he turned toward the little girl. "You asked me if I believe in God. Yes, I do. Because my daughter taught me how to feel him." The little girl's lips trembled. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. Without another word, she clutched her book tightly against her chest, as if holding on to something precious. The little girl stood still, staring at Clint Eastwood. Tears streamed down her face, yet her expression held a quiet peace, like she had finally found the answer she had been searching for. The audience was completely silent. No one spoke. No one even moved. It wasn't just another speech. It was a moment of truth, something deeper than words. Slowly, the little girl closed her book, wiped her tears, and whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Eastwood." Clint gave her a small nod, his eyes warm and kind. He didn't need to say anything else. He knew she had found what she was looking for. The girl pressed the book to her chest and walked back to her seat. As she sat down, the audience watched her, knowing she was not the same little girl who had stood up just moments ago. Clint took one last look at the crowd. His voice, though still deep and strong, now carried a quiet vulnerability. We spend so much time asking God questions. Why does pain exist? Why do good people leave? Why don't we always get the answers we seek? But maybe, just maybe, some answers aren't meant to be spoken. Some answers are meant to be felt. A deep silence followed. Then, suddenly, the audience erupted into applause. But it wasn't just admiration. It was understanding. It was acceptance. Clint glanced once more at the little girl. She was still clutching her book, but now she was smiling. Without another word, Clint Eastwood stepped away from the microphone, turned, and walked off the stage.